Stay safe this summer with these tips. There are 8,800 grill fires per year. 82% of them are started by gas grills. 50% of them occur between May and August. There are approximately 140 injuries per year and $96 million in property damages. We have some tips for safe grilling. If you're grilling outside, away from your home, make sure that there's no children in your area. Make sure you open the lid before igniting the grill. Designate someone who will stay with the grill while it's on. Clear a 3-foot area around the grill and keep it away from your home as well to prevent fires. Keep your grill clean and remove all grease buildup. Place cold coals in a metal lidded container and use soap to check for gas leaks and watch for bubbles, and then turn off the gas when you're finished grilling. And that's it.
Excellent, thank you. So we have a few general communications to go over this morning. In this slide deck, we've done our best to hit all of the topics that some of you have either previously voiced concerns on or have sent in, some predefined questions, right? Pre-meeting questions. One of the big ones is the 25 kW net metering cap exemption. So let's address that right now. So National Grid and the other Massachusetts utilities are still operating under the existing tariff, which is the 10 kW net metering cap exemption. We will continue to utilize the existing tariff with the 10 kW net metering cap exemption until such a time that the DPU issues the revision accommodating the 25 kW net metering cap exemption threshold. The good news is that the department has opened a docket. It's Mass DPU 23-140 on the subject, so we are gaining traction on that. So hopefully we'll see something relatively soon. We're excited for it. We are very supportive of it, and we're looking to get, just like you're all looking to see that happen, we are too. So we'll keep you informed on that, and you can certainly follow along on the progress utilizing the Mass DPU website. One thing that we have noticed that's been occurring a little bit more frequently is site plans, the as-builts that are being sent in are being sent in with system sizes that are larger than the system that was approved. I can't stress it enough. Don't build it unless you have approval from us. And the reason why I say that is because of DG saturation on these secondary cribs. We don't want you to be in a position where you've built a system larger than what we've approved, and somebody else on the same street is building a system that is taking up the capacity on that secondary transformer, and you end up in a position where now you're going back to your customer and saying, hey, we have to reduce the system size, or we have to pay for a transformer upgrade. It really doesn't help anybody, right? So if you know ahead of time that your system is going to be larger than what you initially submitted, please reach out to us. Let us work with you and try to see if there's a solution that works. Maybe it's a quick win, right? And it's like, hey, yeah, no problem, go ahead and build it. But at least you'll know in advance of putting these panels on the roof and investing all of that time and labor, that there might be challenges, right? And you can avoid that. So once you receive that conditional approval, if there's any variance, reach out to us before you install it, so that way we can help you along the process. As a reminder, the end of the year is coming quick. What we always ask is for simplified applications. Try to get all of your completion documents into us by December 1st. And I know that sounds like a long time because we set meters relatively quick, right? Generally, our field is setting them in 4 or 5 days. We're reviewing completion documents in 1 or 2 business days. So in theory, you should have plenty of time. But don't forget that winter is when we have winter storms, right? And winter storms can really wreak havoc on our ability to get our crews out there to finalize this work for you. We don't want you or our mutual customer to be in a position where they don't get those tax credits at the end of the year for unforeseen delays because of weather-related events. One thing that I really want to touch on, and I don't think we've said it or said it enough. We want you to be as successful as possible in everything that you're doing, and we really want to be a partner in this entire thing. Lean on us, call us, work, let us work with you. But one of the biggest things that I think we can all benefit from is proper communication with our customers. And part of that starts with providing the accurate customer email address when you're populating the customer information in the portal. And maybe even have, when your sales team is out there talking to customers, let them know you're going to be receiving notifications from National Grid's application portal. It'll come over as NCAP, right? Which is the National Grid portal. On behalf, it'll say NCAP on behalf of National Grid, and there's valuable information in there, right? They're going to know which step that they're in. When the case is being progressed, they'll get a notification that we've received their application. The application has been approved, conditionally approved. They'll get the notification of the meter installation, right? The meter exchange notice. And if the customer is aware, that's probably going to help you too, right? Because they're going to be able to see these notifications and not have to call you and say, where do I stand with National Grid? What has National Grid done? They'll be able to see that. Now, I will say that we've gotten reports that some customers are not seeing any of those emails because they're going into their spam. So when you're talking to your customer, let them know. Check your spam folder too, because it could be going in there. But I think ultimately, I get it that at times it doesn't feel like we're all that interested in helping. Believe me when I tell you that I have 20 people that work for me that argue differently. We are very much interested in making sure that you can be as successful as possible, and we are committed to making sure that we're getting you information as quickly as possible. Our current application lead time is 3 business days. So you send in an application 3 business days later, you should be getting that conditional approval back in hand, or a notification that we need to do a little bit more research on this one because maybe there's a secondary crib configuration that needs to be adjusted. And even if that's the case, it's 15 business days. So at worst, and I want to say that it's something like 96%, 95% of them, you're going to hear back in 3 business days. With that said, we'll move on to our next slide, Taylor, if you don't mind. JJ, who is our lead screener, who handles the screening for applications when they come in for the secondary transformer loading, and many of you probably already dealt with JJ when we provide options to reduce system size, curtail, export limiting. So JJ is going to go through a lot of that information with you now. But if you have any questions while we're going through this, please feel free to use the form that Taylor has provided so that we can address any questions, thoughts, or concerns that you may have. JJ?
Thanks, George. Hey, everybody. I'm JJ. I'm the lead screener, like George said. And to kind of hammer home what he just said, too, about being helpful, a lot of us have been in the industry for a long time, have a lot of different backgrounds and experiences to try and help and progress projects, because that's our job, is to try and help and progress projects. And this that I'm covering now with metering installations and service upgrades and things like that is just to kind of prevent those holds that prevent project progression. So I'm going to go over some quick reminders for like system installations. Obviously, all installations need to abide by all NEC and electrical ESB rules and regulations. Any service upgrades, anytime the service is going to be touched, needs to come up to the most recent NEC and ESB standards. For any new systems that require meter relocation from inside to outside, so all system upgrades that have any meters located inside need to have the meters relocated outside. And that's up to CMS's discretion. So there might be a case or two where they could provide some leniency there, but anytime a service is touched, got to come up to code. Meter sockets and disconnects must meet necessary clearances. It's mostly for our meter workers to be able to work safely. The system needs to be installed in accordance with the paperwork that was applied for, like George said, like the as-built can't be larger, or the system can't be larger than what was applied for. It's just going to create delays further on in the process. Ensure that all the proper labeling is applied to all parts of the DER system as required by the NEC and ASB. Any installations that don't abide, by all of our codes are going to be placed on hold by the metering department until the corrections are completed. And then any new metering won't be installed if proper closeout documents are not provided. And then here's some common terms and definitions that we have here at the company, including point of interconnection, which is where the DER system connects in parallel to the electrical system, the point of common coupling, where the company and customer equipment meet, also known as demarcation point. ESS, which you'll see an acronym everywhere, just stands for energy storage system. When we talk about it in residential, it could be AC or DC coupled. BTM stands for behind the meter. It's any renewable energy system located behind an existing electrical service that requires a bidirectional meter. And these are the most common types of systems that we see when we're talking about residential and simplified and expedited. And then a standalone system where the renewable energy system isn't being offset by any type of load and it's just dedicated solely to be connected in parallel. Next slide, please. So AHJs, authorities having jurisdiction. Here in any part in the country, there's always two AHJs. There's the local town wiring electrical inspector that's going to inspect everything from the meter socket and the weatherhead into the property and ensure that building and everything is safe to live in. And then there's a utility company, which it does just National Grid, where we're going to make sure that the electrical meter socket is safe to work on by our metering department, that the meter is properly installed, that it meets all the clearances over streets for the service drop and things like that. And one of National Grid's main priority in operations is definitely the delivery of safe and reliable electrical energy, as well as the safety to all of our stakeholders. So to maintain the integrity of National Grid's electrical infrastructure, our personnel need to make sure that they can go to work every day and perform the required tasks as safely as possible. And that kind of leads to why we need some system upgrades, which the next couple of slides, I'll show you some pictures, but we believe in zero injuries on the job every day for all of our employees, contractors, in our entire community. And to be able to maintain that system safety, anytime a system is installed or being upgraded, it needs to be in accordance with all of our ESB standards. Any older services that could pose harm should be reviewed and upgraded, and National Grid employees will not work on anything that could potentially fail and harm them in the field. Next slide, please. And this is a good example of something that a meter worker or somebody in the field will walk up to. And let's say I'm installing a small 3.8 kW or 7.6 kW AC system behind a 2-pole 40 amp breaker at my residence. I understand that you're not really touching the service, but when we come up to something like this, we cannot swap out that meter for a bi-directional meter safely. And that's kind of up to the installer and the builders and the developers to make sure that they look at the service before they apply or before they let the homeowner know, because this will cause a hold, and then somebody has to explain it to the customer why they can't get a bidirectional meter, and it's because you didn't take the time to the time wasn't taken to make sure that the existing service was safe to work on. Next slide, please. Another couple of meter sockets that are no longer standard that would need to be upgraded if we wanted a new bidirectional meter. So all our new metering won't work in these types of enclosures because the old ring style are no longer allowable. So next slide, please. For meter sockets, these are new. Tesla came out with one of these disconnects that go in a meter socket. Generac has one. These are new to the industry. National Grid or any utility, Eversource, Unitil, anywhere in Massachusetts, none of us allow any kind of equipment in any of our meter sockets, no adapters, no additional equipment, anything. So if you would like to put this on your own customer-owned meter socket that is, maintained by the developer or the owner of the residence, that's perfectly fine if you would like to use that as your disconnecting means. But if it's a utility-owned meter socket, a utility-owned MA smart meter, a utility-owned net meter, these are not allowed, and these will not be approved, and we will not be able to install a bidirectional meter for these types of installs. Next slide, please. Taps or splices, not allowed. A meter socket should just have incoming line terminated at the terminals and outgoing load side terminated at the terminals. No splicers or taps of any kind inside any meter socket are allowed. And then also fifth terminal for single phase 208 volt services. National Grid has a lot of older infrastructure areas like some Beverly areas, Malden, Worcester, where we have single phase 208 volt services. We've had some issues where projects got delayed because the wrong style meter socket was installed, like a single phase 12240 volt meter socket was installed because the voltage wasn't measured properly at the site. These are kind of rare, but they do come up, and we would love to ensure that you guys ensure that you're installing the right equipment for the right voltage on site. Next slide, please. And here are a couple of pictures of, a correctly installed and labeled meter socket and disconnect. On the left, you have a meter socket that meets all the proper clearances, heights, is properly accessible. And then on the right, you have a newly installed DER PV system with a 24/7 accessible, lockable, located disconnected meter socket. Next slide, please. And then here I have figure 3.1 here, which just shows a typical 100 amp and 200 amp residential 4 and 5 terminal meter socket for single phase 12240 volt at the top, and then 208 volt at the bottom with the FIT terminal, with a picture of a properly installed FIT terminal on the left to kind of depict how that should look when installations occur in the field to prevent any delays. Next slide, please. Most of all of the installation requirements and sections in our ESB are located, right here for the most part for any of the ones that directly relate to service upgrades and meter installations. I'm not going to go through all these sections, but these are the ones that kind of pinpoint all the specifics that we'll need to prevent any holds as far as like your clearance requirements and like things that metering will look for to make sure that they can safely install equipment. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass this off to Jesse to review the simplified process.
Thank you, JJ. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yesenia Rosa. I also go by Jesse, and I am your residential small commercial supervisor here within DG. I'm going to go over the simplified process with you. Next slide, please. So the simplified criteria consist of UL listed SB inverter-based systems with power ratings of 15 kW or less on a single-phase service, or UL listed 1741 SB inverter-based systems power ratings of 25 kW or less on a three-phase service. The simplified process does not apply for non-listed inverters or generators, aggregate generation capacity of listed inverters that exceed the above-mentioned limits, or projects that do not pass the simplified process screens. Next slide, please. This slide just consists of your process steps. So I'm not going to go through every step, right? But you submit your case, it's reviewed within 10 days. We grant you conditional approval. Once you have that conditional approval, you could go out there and install your system. You submit your completion documents to us, which are also reviewed within 10 business days. We then, as long as there are no discrepancies within those completion documents, we then order the meter, which is also installed within 10 business days. And once that meter is installed, you get your authority to interconnect. That is also sent to both customer and installer. Next slide, please. This slide consists of your review path. I'm not going to go through each line item here, but as you know, once you submit that case, you get the immediate email that it's been submitted, acknowledgement received, right? And then we have those timelines: review within 10 days, completion documents within 10 days, meter setting within 10 days. So everything is here on this slide in regards to the time frame. And then just a quick note, if you choose to e-sign your documents, your case will stay in draft status until the documents are signed by the customer. Once the documents are signed, that's what pushes the case into the submitted status. Next slide, please. So here we'll go over some common holds and concerns in regards to applications. Please remember, when you're entering your KWAC system size at the triage stage of your case, you want to enter your inverter size and any AC coupled storage, right? So for example, if you have a 7.6 inverter with a 5.0 Tesla storage, your total constrained system size is going to be 12.6 kWAC. So that's what you're going to enter in that triage question, because that drives your case, right? Whether it's going to go through simplified or through the expedited review, and it also drives the payment. So if you enter in on your second example, 11.4 plus a 5.0 Tesla, that's going to equal 16.5. That's going to actually push you into the expedited process. But if you only put in 11.4, the case and the application portal is going to think that that's your total constraint output, so it's going to put you into the simplified process. So very important, right, that when we're entering that total constraint output, that we are counting any AC coupled storage on there. Let's see. If you receive an error that the account number is invalid, that means that you're entering in an incorrect account number, because our records are showing that that account number is most likely finaled, which is why you're getting that error in return. So you want to reach out to the customer. You want to ask them to provide you with the updated account information so that you could then provide that to submit that on the case. Let's see what else. If there's an existing system, also please ensure that you are writing yes to that question on the triage section of your case, because again, that also drives your case into what process it's going to fall under, right? If you have an existing system out there that's, let's say 7.6, and you're adding another 7.6, that's not a simplified case. At that point, it would be an expedited case. So just ensure that you are entering in any existing systems, yes, if there are, and that size, if you have that size. You can also go back to the customer and see if they have that previous ATI, which would indicate the size of that system, or they could reach out to us to get another copy of that previous ATI. Next slide, please. Some more common holds here. Do not forget that there can only be one net metering system per parcel unless you're granted approval by the DPU, Department of Public Utilities. If there is more than one system on the parcel and both systems equal 10 kW or less, they can both be net metered. However, if the total size of both of those systems equals over 10 kW, only one of them is allowed to be net metered and the other one must be qualifying facility. The application and the case must match the customer's bill account name, address, account number, and meter number as it is on the bill. So please ensure that all your documents do reflect the information as it is on that bill account. The customer's bill account should be up to date and all obligations met and or cleared. All AC coupled storage should be noted on the application. Application rules. Do not forget to enter in your billing customer and system owner on the application rules. And remember, it's only one role needed. So you only need one developer, one application owner, one billing customer, and one system owner. If there's Mass Smart, electrician application rule is required. And then ensure that hold resets are being addressed before resubmitting your case. There are many times where we'll put the hold notes on the case. Email gets sent out, but that case is being resubmitted back to us without the revision. So just ensure that you are going through that email, reading the details of the hold, and then addressing those holds. And then some concerns and holds after the conditional approval is issued. If you have Mass Smart, you do have a service upgrade form that does need to be filled out and a work order initiated, right? That is for the installation of that second Mass Smart meter socket. So you want to go into your case, if it is Mass Smart, fill out the service upgrade form. It will not finalize. Keep in mind, again, it will not finalize. It'll stay in draft status. That will then click over to us, right, and let us know that this is ready to be reviewed and a work order issued. If the system changes, please ensure that you are putting in a change application on that case with the notes on what is changing. We will then go in and open up the documents. I have a slide coming up later on in regards to that change review process that I'll go over. Next slide, please. And again, the initial application should be for the desired systems. You know, we do have a lot of saturation right now. So if you do change that system size and it is increasing, please do reach out before you actually go out there and make that change at the site. As far as the completion package, ensure that your work order inspection has been cleared, right, for the Mass Smart installs, or even if you have an upgrade on a service, you have to redo the meter socket, right? You have to put in a new meter socket because it showed rusted, like we showed in earlier slides. That would require a work request and it would require an inspection by the inspector. So that would need to be cleared before we can install a net meter or a bidirectional meter. For Mass Smart, ensure that your Mass Smart socket is wired correctly, line on top, load on the bottom. Meter sockets are not allowed to be used as junction boxes, as JJ had mentioned earlier. And again, equipment adapters are not allowed. Let's see. If you do start your case as Mass Smart and Mass Smart is then removed, ensure that you do put in a change review so that we can remove Mass Smart from the case and all the documents, and it reflects that it is no longer a Mass Smart system. Expansions of interconnected Mass Smart projects are not allowed. Please do keep that in mind. If you are increasing the system size on a Mass Smart project that has already been approved and granted final SOQ, you do have to go to Clear Result to get approval for that. And some common meter holds that we're seeing are wiring to a different meter. Let's say there's 2 meters on site for the one premise. Sometimes it's a hot water meter. Sometimes it's, it could be a meter for something else that they may have at the home. We are seeing that the case and documents will reflect one meter and then the photo will reflect the other meter. So just ensure that, we are wiring, or that you are wiring these systems to the meter that you state that you're going to wire. And if it changes, submit that change review. Fifth terminal missing is another reason why cases get put on hold at the meter installation part of the process. So just ensure that you are installing that 5th terminal, as JJ mentioned earlier. And ensure that the paths are clear to the meter socket, no trees, bushes, debris. Now that winter's coming, clear of snow, and that we're able to get to that meter socket safely. Next slide, please. Quick review on change reviews here. As you know, when there's a change to the system after you've been granted conditional approval, you want to go into the case, you want to enter a change application. Once you enter that change application, you put in the details of what you're changing. What happens is we get a notification, we go into the case, we open up the documents that we need to open up for you to revise and submit those changes. Once you revise the documents and submit those revisions, we again go into the case, we get notified, we go into the case, and we review the changes. Once we review the changes, we either approve or we advise you that we cannot approve it for whatever the reason is. Most part, the reason that we cannot approve it is because the transformer is overloaded. So at that point, you have to make a decision, right, with the customer as to whether or not you want to move forward with the original system size that was approved, or if you're going to go via the expedited path for that increased system size. So that's the process for change reviews. In the event that you do put in a change review and you don't hear back, or the forms are not open within 24 to 48 hours, feel free to enter in a chat. I do have a change review representative. His name is Dylan. You could always chat him or chat myself. Next slide, please. And this slide is just speaking on concerns after interconnection. For the most part, the concerns are around MassSmart, right? When MassSmart is installed, but the customer got denied for MassSmart program, or the case got withdrawn, whether it was withdrawn by the customer installer, it was withdrawn or denied. So in that situation, you want to notify us, let us know it's no longer a MassSmart system, and then we can work with you and the customer if we have to remove the MassSmart meter. And if we don't have to remove it, we can just, we could leave it there, but we can work together, right, to get that MassSmart removed from the case and the documents if needed. And then again, wiring to different units or a different meter than what was originally submitted. We're seeing that an increase in that as well. So right now we're working these as one-offs with the installers, with the customers to correct the systems, right, and get a net meter in the correct socket. So, just ensure that when you're sending your installers out to install these systems, that we're confirming with the customer, where they want it installed, so that those changes can be made before we actually provide the ATI. Next slide, please. In some instances, we do see mixed meter situations. If it's something that you catch, please notify us. We'll work with our accounts maintenance department to determine exactly what meter should be on the bill account. And then, of course, if it's something that we catch, we will work with you and let you know that there is a mixed meter situation at that premise. And before we can move forward, we have to correct that mixed meter situation. So that really pretty much consists of us going out to the premise, meeting with the customer, confirming which meter is feeding which unit, and then we come back into our records and we correct that within our records. So that's what the process looks like for a mixed meter situation. If it's something that you see and you come across, please send that to us. Because the sooner we know about it, the faster we could get it resolved. And if we could get it resolved before we change that meter, even better, right? Because now we're changing the correct meter versus changing the wrong one. Next slide, please. I'm not really going to talk on all the bullet points on this slide. This is just for the work order. If you have MassSmart or if you're doing an upgrade, as you know, the inspector has to call the work request department and clear that inspection on that work order, which is attached to the bill account for that specific customer. So the phone number, emails are on this slide. If you do need them, you could also always reference this slide. Next slide, please. And on this slide, we're just speaking on some common questions for storage. As we know, AC coupled storage is something that you have to put on your application, right? It is a requirement to add that equipment on the application, add the notes on the one line, and count that storage capacity towards your with the inverter as well. So you have a 7.0 of a 10.0 inverter, 7.0 storage, your total KW would be 17.0. Next slide, please. If in the event when we are reviewing your case for the simplified process, if that transformer is overloaded, you will get an email, right? two situations can happen. You're going to get an email saying that you must downsize because the transformer can only hold X amount, or there is no option to downsize. The transformer is completely overloaded. It cannot hold any more DG on it, and the case must be transitioned over to expedited. So we'll go over what that expedited review looks like later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. A few reminders. Again, don't forget to enter in your total kWAC size. That includes inverter and AC coupled storage. For simplified cases, we do have a list of contacts. So depending on your case status and your question will determine what representative you can chat, right, on the case. I have a group of about 10, 13 employees, and a part of them work on one part of the process, so application review, the other part work on the COC part of the process. So really depending on your case status, right, and your question, you can chat one of my representatives. In some cases, I do see, that you're chatting a representative and you're not getting a response. And most likely it's because that representative doesn't really work that part of the process. So they're reaching out to someone else to get you an answer. So really use this chatter guidance document. It's something I created so that it can help you with, getting your questions answered. In the event that you don't get a response, as I always mention to all my installers, just chat me, shoot me an email, and I will, see that you do get a response. If something changes, enter a change review. Make sure all inspections are cleared. Make sure that the customer's obligations and bill account are up to date. And last but not least, we cannot help you on Rhode Island cases. We are no longer, those two businesses have split, right? So myself and all the representatives here at National Grid cannot assist on any Rhode Island energy cases. So please do not chat us on Rhode Island cases because there's nothing that we can really do for you. And then, of course, the last bullet here is withdraw all cases that will not be moving forward. If you know that you're not having, that a case is not going to be moving forward, please withdraw that case. That way it opens up, right, that capacity for the next customer who wants to install solar. And then, of course, we have the over 1 year cases that we do review. And if your case has been in that queue for over a year, we ask that you withdraw it if it's not going to move forward. If it is going to move forward, then let us know. We'll put in like an extension on that case for you. And last slide, please. Here on this last slide, you have my contact information, my email, my phone number. I do want to offer at this time to all my installers. I know I have several calls already set up with several of you, but for those of you who are not set up with me, if you would like, I do set up recurring meetings. We can go over any portal issues, any questions, concerns that you may have with a case, with submitting, anything that has to do with the simplified process. I'll be more than happy to set those up for you. Just reach out to me, let me know, and I'll put that together. And with that, I leave you here also with the link for my chatter guidance document. And have a great day, everyone. I'm moving it on to Mike for the expedited process.
Hi, I'm Mike Armel. I'm a project manager with the expedited team. So we handle the projects that would move through simplified due to size or screens and go a different way. So with the expedited projects, typically at a high level, we would say that the jobs that have the inverter-based systems are greater than 15 kW on a radial feed. These are single phase. On the 3-phase, it's greater than 25 kW on the radial feed. Smaller jobs that don't pass a simplified process screens also go through expedited. All non-simplified jobs go through us unless they require an impact study. Also, as far as supplemental reviews, this is determined on our screenings. So many of you who go through the expedited process and do have jobs that require a supplemental review and are on smaller residential systems. Typically, that would be because we have pad mount transformers in the field, or we have line extensions that are required, and we have to have someone in the field do a proper design to get the results in detail. Just a reminder, the simplified section pretty much feeds into what we do here from a process standpoint. And I'll just cover some of the differences. Next slide, please. So with expedited projects, if you have a project greater than 250 kW, we do require that you do a pre-application. When we're in the application process, we determine that it's expedited. We would then go through all your application documents, determine if we can just issue an ISA at that time, or determine due to the field conditions or the sizing, et cetera, that we do need a supplemental review. Upon the completion of both those events separately, we would issue the ISA. If construction is required, we have a signed ISA. If payments were required and they've been made, we would then do our construction in the field. Once you're at the point where COC process, this is usually on residential property, residential services. We will not do any witness testing. We use the commissioning memo process as part of the COC process to then issue the new meter exchange, and then we will send you the ATI. Next slide, please. As far as our days, parallel to what we do in Simplified, the large changes that we need 25 business days if we have to go through full screening. Usually it's done in less time than that. If it does determine that we need a supplemental review in the field, it's 20 business days. At that time, we determine any pricing or construction that's required. We will deliver that ISA within 10 business days. So if there's no supplemental review required, it's a 45-day business day turnaround and 65 on the supplemental. Our construction schedules vary. As many of you know, if we have pad mount transformers, we did have some supply challenges earlier, and we have less crews that do underground construction versus overhead. So we will have varying timeframes for construction. Okay, next slide. Okay. Some of on the expedited side, we do see some common errors in application packages. We do require a legal information form. We want the version 2.2 to be used and filled out completely. No older ones, and please try to fill it out completely. Our one-line diagrams require a PE stamp. This is Massachusetts, so we need a Massachusetts engineer stamp. Notes on the one line should have the notes that we share regarding the ESB. We do have a blurb that we share if it's not there for you to add to your one lines. If there's a battery on the project, ensure that the application reflects the equipment in both the assets and the stamp one line. So everywhere in the case, we need this to agree. Make sure the storage and charging discharging capability is noted on the one line. So the one line also should reflect any curtailment or limited export. A curtailment letter is required to be in that application package. When the case is in conditional approval delivered, pending customer decision, don't hit finalize submission until you've uploaded the signed ISA. Otherwise, we'll have to reopen it and start over. Next slide, please. For our expedited projects that are less than 60 kW, a commissioning memo is used. So most of the time, we will take a commissioning memo and we will a witness test. The commissioning memo should have the 2-second shutdown when disconnect is open test, as well as the 5-minute before restart when disconnect is closed test. Confirm that the system matches the as-built and include the final date of the approved as-built on the memo. List the inverter relay frequency and trip time settings on our commissioning memo. The as-built also should be PE stamped, signed and dated by the person that performed the commissioning test. Dates and signatures should match. Our picture should show a permanent plaque that includes a warning about the generator installed. The pictures, very important that we are able to read the meter number when we're looking at a meter. With the AC disconnect, If the switch is not grouped and it's not adjacent to the utility revenue meter, please put a plaque there that locates where at the facility the production meter is, et cetera, so that emergency and National Grid personnel can get to it. The inspections, please have your electrician call in and clear all work request inspections. This is specifically for Mass Smart, and if you had called in for a service upgrade separately of the DG work being undertaken. Next slide. For metering, no equipment adapters, as JJ discussed, between the meter and the socket and the meter socket. Sockets are not allowed to be used as junction boxes. Make sure the test meter is, that's a big one. Make sure the test meter is removed prior to our personnel showing, so provide a picture that has been removed. If a job is larger than 60 kW in mass, it does require wireless metering. If that is the case, this needs to be on a 4G wireless Verizon network. If it is hardwired, there's no way to do wireless because of the location. It has to be 100% copper. We cannot use fiber. If we are going this route, we do need 10 to 12 weeks ahead of time to have that meter ordered and programmed. So we can't do that last minute. We won't be able to get you ATI in enough time. Also, make sure there's a clear path to meter location. So in the winter, please make sure it's self-shoveled. Any gates are open or unlocked. Next slide. Thank you. Next would be Ashwin covering the preliminary screening.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everybody. This is Ashwin. I'll be covering the preliminary screening section. I'm one of the screeners on the screening team. Next slide, please. In our preliminary screening, once an application is submitted for all projects, several technical reviews need to be performed. These reviews, screenings below, help maintain the safety and reliability of our distribution system for all our stakeholders, as well as abide by all DPU mandated tariff requirements. Transformer check, E-check. In this process, we check the existing load on the transformer that feeds the service for the proposed project address. Secondary crib check, EV check. In this process, we ensure that any proposed interconnection will not exceed 25 kVA on any shared secondary and will not create overvoltage or nuisance tripping. Next slide, please. Once these preliminary screenings are completed, the proposed projects can remain in the simplified path or will be required to progress through the expedited path. As shown in the flow chart below, if the preliminary screening passes, project remains in the simplified path and proceeds without additional requirements. If the preliminary screenings fail, customers are given an option to reduce system size and resubmit application documents. Customer can request to go through the expedited process with proposed system as screened. If the project cannot progress without system modifications or further detailed screening is required, it will be progressed via the expedited path. Next slide, please. Expedited projects will undergo a detailed screening review where the need for potential system modifications or supplemental review will be identified. Once your project's path has been determined, any submitted documents that were submitted will be reviewed by the assigned, simplified, or expedited case owner. Application review checklist is depicted in the next couple of slides for any required documents for simplified and application review processes. I definitely recommend folks review the next couple of slides, which will be available after our webinar. I will be passing it on to Brian, who will go over the expedited screening and supplemental review process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwin. Okay, so adding on to what Ashwin just touched on, we'll start with expedited screenings. A few folks have mentioned already, and I won't go verbatim because we do want to leave some time for questions. But once an application is deemed to require any type of system modifications, supplemental review, or exceeds simplified tariff thresholds, the proposed project will progress via the expedited path. A few things that we look at, in addition to the expedited case owner in screening, are listed at the bottom of this slide. Next slide, please, Taylor. When determining system modifications, the screening team looks at the least cost to serve option for our mutual customer. This option implements whatever the minimum system modifications could be while safely and reliably allowing interconnections to our distribution system. Some examples of distribution system modifications include secondary service drop replacement, conductor reconfiguration, transformer replacement or installation, pole and anchor replacements, and primary line extensions, which would require supplemental review. Next slide, please. Okay, supplemental review. If system modifications or upgrade estimates cannot be determined during the screening process, this is when the project requires to be sent to supplemental review. Supplemental review per MDPU number 1468, section 1.2 is defined as follows. Additional engineering study to evaluate the potential impact of the facility on the company EPS so as to determine any requirements for processing the application through the expedited process. We finalize the screening with all necessary project notes and distribution system notes for our field engineering team to confirm and determine required system modifications and estimates. Supplemental reviews are progressed internally with the service work request number that is associated with the DG case number. Several situations for supplemental review progression could be the additional review of a challenging or complex area, review of any underground areas or areas that require an on-site visit by our field engineering team, or projects that require complex system modifications with costly estimates. Next slide, please. Once the expedited screening is finalized, the proposed projects are issued conditional approval or progressed to supplemental review. If conditionally approved, your case owner will send out an ISA within 10 business days of the completed screening. The ISA will have any potential system modifications and estimated costs to proceed with interconnection. If the project progresses via supplemental review, the case owner will reach out and inform the customer and developer that the project will need additional engineering review. Once the customer is notified and pays the required fee, the project then will progress via supplemental review. If the proposed project is in a group study area and exceeds 50 kWAC, the project will need to be placed on hold behind the ongoing group study. Next slide, please. Now this graphic here illustrates what I just touched upon. If anyone would like to refer back to this at a later time. Next slide, please. Thank you. There are some commonly missed items leading to application and screening review holds. I'll focus on line diagram omissions and site plan omissions. We'll start with line diagram, inverter and interrupting device nameplate rating, relay settings, make, model, voltage, and current rating, as well as missed electrical engineering PE stamp that is signed, dated, and not obscuring the stamp. Aggregate AC KW ratings of the entire proposed system, and derating or curtailment method and associated notes. Continuing on to site plan omissions, point of common coupling labeling, and company pole number nearest to the proposed PCC. Next slide, please. Okay, this last slide discusses the ESB 756 and 750. If proposing a new standalone system that is interconnecting to an existing pad-mounted transformer, please note, customer acknowledges that they have checked to verify there's enough spacing on the secondary of the company transformer for the DG interconnection. The customer understands and accepts that they are liable for any issue arising from, including but not limited to, insufficient space. This includes, but is not limited to, increased costs, need to restudy, need to perform a detailed study, and or potential risk to viability of the project. All mass smart systems require generation and in some instances, storage charge and discharge to be captured ahead of any loads. All expedited cases that need further study will need all the documentation required for standard projects. All final metering locations will be determined by the metering department and will be based upon existing service configuration. Work should not begin until the metering department has approved final disconnect and meter locations on site with the electrician. Next, I will pass it on to Anish to discuss derating and curtailment.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to briefly go over derating and curtailment in these next few slides. Derating is the act of reducing or limiting the nameplate rating of a piece of equipment to operate at a level below its intended rating. The term derating is used commonly with curtailment, but the major difference is when changing the nameplate rating of the equipment, we consider that derating. But when changing the system export capabilities, we consider that curtailment. Inverters or generators can be derated. Systems are typically curtailed. Please note, DPU or CADMAS no longer allows derating to be eligible for net pay. Below is the language that covers the requirements for derating in our ESB 756. Next, I'll move on to curtailment. Curtailment is the act of reducing or restricting something. As said before, when changing the system export capabilities, we consider that curtailment, and it can be achieved through using PCS that has a UL 1741 SP certification. Our current practice is to allow projects with a total system size of 25 kWAC or less to utilize curtailment to avoid system modifications and avoid ongoing group studies for R1 and R2 residential grade customers only. Below is our ESB 756 section on import and export control that covers power control systems. Next slide, please. And the next one. The required documentation. So when derating or curtailing a system, National Grid requires several items. A derating or curtailment letter is required on the manufacturer's letterhead with the make, model number, voltage, current, original equipment nameplate rating, and derated curtailed rating on the inverter equipment. The letter needs to include the site address, case number, and the method of derating or curtailment, and match all site plan and online information. All letters needs to note that inverter equipment output can only be adjusted by the manufacturer. Please also make sure all this information is on the one line and all the assets are entered correctly onto the portal along with the PCS equipment. Next slide, please. Next, we'll move on to site limiting protective function. National Grid requires all of this information to show up correctly and accurately, thus reflected on all of the submitted documents. When utilizing a PCS, National Grid needs to add the piece of equipment. It can be Tesla gateway, Generac Powerwall, Enphase gateway, etc. as a site limiting protection function in the assets in the portal. Below is the link to our shareholder website that contains the step-by-step on how to create the protective function. The protective function asset will reflect the piece of equipment that will curtail the system. Below is an example on how this will look in the portal, but I'll leave it due to time constraint. You can visit this later and look at it. Next slide, please. These two slides are the step-by-step on how to add the site limiting protective function. You'll be able to access these slides later of this webinar. Next slide. And the next. Next. Okay. So that's it for derating and curtailing. Now I'll hand over to Marisa for portal support. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. For the interest of time, I am going to quickly run through my portal support slides. Next slide, please. So I want to start off with some application portal do's and don'ts. So just make sure you do not edit the developer role once it's pre-populated in the portal. Do not edit the application owner role as well. Always enter an inverter or an AC power producing asset, or it's going to prevent you from finalizing your submission. Always indicate if there's an existing system at triage when it asks the question existing system with a drop down yes or no. And then all line diagrams need to contain this note that has that's listed here. If you need to reference the note, you can always come back to these slides. And then making sure to sign up for electronic payments. All payments are made electronically. This allows the payment to process quicker as than it would take for a check to be received by USPS. And then there's also a payment portal help page listed below. Next slide, please. So when it comes to entering your incentive, please ensure you are selecting the correct incentive. For all cases that are 10 kW single phase and below, you are able to participate in net metering. For all cases that are over 10 kW single phase, you will select qualifying facility. Once the case is submitted, the QF incentive can be changed to net metering if you receive cabinet's approval and supply the approval document on the case. And then just a quick tip for net metering projects, you will be required to fill out a Schedule Z form. For qualifying facility projects, these will require a Schedule A form. Next slide, please. And just a friendly reminder when submitting an application, when filling out the project location fields on the initial triage questions, please ensure the address you are providing matches what's listed on the National Grid bill. This includes any apartment or unit numbers. If this address does not match what is on the bill, it can cause a delay in your project being progressed. Next slide, please. When submitting an application, please have your 10-digit billing account number handy. This is one of the first fields that needs to be filled out. The billing account number and meter number, like I mentioned in the last slide, can be located on the customer's utility bill. If the customer has any issues locating these numbers, they can contact our customer service center, and I've provided the phone number as well. Next slide, please. So for the required application details section of the application, make sure you're selecting the correct type. If your case includes a battery, make sure you select new application for generation and storage. If you do not select the appropriate forms will not populate, and this is going to cause a delay in your project. Please only select add storage to existing generation if you already have an existing net meter installed. Next slide, please. And then for the total nameplate rating, make sure you are entering the correct system size based on the technical specification sheets of your inverters and batteries. So as just mentioned in the simple slides, if you enter the incorrect system size, this is going to push your project into the incorrect tariff track and or populate forms that are unnecessary to your case. This can also cause a delay in your project if the system size is entered erroneously. Next slide, please. For the required listed section on the initial triage questions, please make sure you are selecting UL 1741 SB. And then, as we all know, effective September 1st of last year, all inverters being used will need to be SB certified. A formal communication was sent out last year regarding this change. Next slide. If you're applying for the MassSmart program, just another friendly reminder, the pictures that I've included on this slide, you just want to make sure you're selecting it from that program section, and then make sure your fuel source is solar as shown below. Next slide. Updating application rules. This is a big topic for all applications across the board. So make sure when you are finished filling out all of the required fields, it will bring you to the application rules screen. This section is very important as any emails that are entered on the screen will be receiving automated emails as the case progresses through our review process. Please ensure email addresses, phone numbers, names are listed accurately as it will cause delays in the progression of your project if they are not. And then I've also included a link for more information on application rules as well. Next slide, please. And then curtailment limited exports. So kind of to add on to Anisha's previous slide, So there are a number of scenarios where it's going to be necessary to curtail or limit the export on a given inverter. And in order for National Grid to provide authority to interconnect, we require the following information. So the curtailment, limited export letter on your company letterhead, and then a protective function asset. And I've also included the guide on this slide as well. We are working actively on updating the product catalog to reflect more protective function assets, so you don't have to enter them manually. Next slide, please. And then I also included just a list of helpful links and guides for some of the slides that I previously talked about. And before I pass this on to post interconnection, I did want to just let the developers know that we are experiencing an issue where cases are trying to transition from simple to expedited. I know that a number of developers are experiencing an issue where the forms don't finalize and the case doesn't progress properly. Just to let you all know, our IT team is currently working on that issue and we hope to have it fixed soon. If you have any portal issues, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, feel free to email me directly. My email should be on these slides. And that's all I have. Next slide. And I'll pass it off to Pam for post interconnection. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. My name's Pam. I work in the DG billing post interconnection, and we're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, billing. Next slide. So net meter billing requirements, we've gone over this a bit already, but renewable energy generation systems, 10 kilowatts or less on a single phase or 25 kilowatts or less on a 3-phase are eligible for net metering without a cap allocation. All other systems require a cap allocation from MassACA, and without a net metering cap allocation, the account will default to a qualifying facility. And as George had mentioned, the new exemption from the cap allocation, these exceptions will be available once the regulatory process has been completed and our net metering tariff has been revised and approved by the DPU. Next slide. So the difference between net metering and qualifying facility, net metering credits are calculated using the following components: distribution, transmission, transition, and fixed basic service rates, with limited exceptions such as non-renewable class 1 facilities and class 3 facilities, not including new solar. Credits can be transferred to other accounts in the same load zone using Schedule Z, and there are new rules allowing certain facilities to transfer credits across load zones or across service territories, and this will also be implemented once the regulatory process has been completed. Qualifying facility credits are based off ISO New England's clearing price. This price fluctuates from month to month. National Grid needs to wait to get those prices from ISO the following month, so this will cause a delay in the customer's billing on any month that they export. And qualifying facility credits are not transferable. We also have a first bill walkthrough. There's a link to it here that has some examples and different explanations of things. Next slide, please. This is just a quick overview of the Schedule Z. A Schedule Z is required when you initially interconnect. You can elect to transfer all, some, or none of your credits, but this form is required for net metering. You can update this form 6 times a year. And again, today, net metering credits can only be transferred within your load zone. And the last 2 bullets are just links where you would submit your Schedule Z updates, and there's also a link to the actual forms themselves. Next slide. So for first bill setup, once you receive your authority to interconnect, your account will be set up to begin receiving your incentives. It can take us between 1 and 3 billing cycles after you receive ATI to actually get the account set up for billing. If you're participating in the Mass Smart program, there's also a delay between receiving your first net metering bill or qualifying facility bill and your smart incentive. You receive authority to interconnect, and after that, you receive approval for the Mass Smart program. This can take a few months depending on how quickly documentation is being submitted to Clear Result, the third-party administrator. And blocks 1 through 8, Smart is a block system. So if you're in blocks 1 through 8, your smart incentive is retroactive to your authority to interconnect date. Blocks 9 through 16, your smart incentives are active on the next billing cycle date, and it's actually in your final SOQ, the effective date of your smart incentives. And once you get your Mass Smart final SOQ, it can take us a couple of billing cycles to get your account set up for that as well. Next slide. So this is just a quick example of what a net metering customer's bill will look like on months that they overgenerate, that they generate more power than they use. You can see the net metering credit value, which also changes based on those values that we had mentioned earlier. And the total usage is the net value. So it's a negative value in this example because this customer generated more power than they used. Next slide. This is possibly that same customer on a month when they did not generate more power than they used. So their total usage shows as a positive value. Their bill is reduced by the solar generation, but nowhere on this bill does it actually show net metering credits. It simply reduces the load that the customer is being billed for. We also have a new solar hub that has examples of all different incentives and different examples of bills and what they'll look like. So definitely check that out. Next slide, please. So Jesse spoke to this a bit earlier. We're just going to go a little bit deeper on this topic for the single parcel rule, the rooftop blanket exception. You can qualify for a rooftop cap exemption, blanket exception. All of the following conditions must be met. The net metering facilities must be participating in the general net metering program, not small hydro. The net metering facilities must be located on rooftops, and each net metering facility must be tied behind the electric service of the structure on which it's located. And the facilities may be located on either the same or different rooftops on the same parcel of land. The aggregate nameplate capacity of all the net metering facilities on the parcel of land must be 10 kilowatts or less on a single phase circuit, 25 kilowatts or less on a 3-phase circuit. Each net metering facility must have a separate revenue meter, and each facility must have at least submitted an interconnection application with the EDC and received a communication from the EDC stating that the application is complete. Next slide. So you need to fill out an application for this exemption with the DPU. There's a link here. There's no charge to apply for this exception. I just put a couple of examples on here. So for example, 123 Main Street is fed by a single phase circuit. There are 3 units on this parcel of land. Each unit interconnects a 3 kilowatt rooftop solar array behind separate meters. Because the aggregate of all 3 systems is 10 kilowatts or less, this location may qualify for the exception for all 3 arrays to be net metered. You need to fill out the application, and then that approval needs to be provided to National Grid. And the second example is of a 3-phase circuit. This location can have a single family home, a detached garage, and a carport. All 3 rooftops have 10 kilowatt solar arrays installed behind separate meters. The first 2 installed systems can apply for the rooftop blanket exception to net meter, and the third installed array would not be eligible to net meter because it would be over that 25 kilowatts. But they may be eligible for other incentives such as a qualifying facility. Next slide. Oh, that was my last slide. Thank you.
All right. So we have a bunch of questions that were submitted. We will take the opportunity to go over those now. Some of them were answered throughout the course of our presentation. The first one was, when can we expect National Grid to begin approving systems above 10 kW AC up to 25 kW AC for the net metering credits? As we mentioned, we're still waiting on DPU approval for that. The following question was, power control export limit full net metering batteries. JJ, I think you had an answer in there.
Yeah, this is assuming that they're talking about how DER systems can no longer be derated to be eligible for the net metering incentive. That was a decision made by the Department of Public Utilities and Cadmus here in Massachusetts. And that is all that we know as of right now from the DPU and Cadmus. Our internal legal counsel has set up a meeting with DPU and Cadmus to kind of go over why and how, because we feel at National Grid that once a system is derated, the system size is permanently fixed and changed so that it could be part of net metering. So there's more to come on that.
All right, and then when will e-sign function return? Marissa?
So depending, basically what I can do, I can set up a meeting and if possible, if we could just go through a case to see what errors you're receiving or if the agreement's not being sent to the right email address or it's not being signed in a timely manner, we can go over that one-on-one. As of right now, I know that it is working. But I know that there are times where if like the payloads are down for some reason or there's an interface issue that it can stop working temporarily. So I can I'll reach out via email and we'll set up some time to go over that in full.
All right, and the next question, will distributed generation ever get a working phone line? Rich Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, currently there are no plans for a dedicated department line, like a call center line. All our representatives and leads have their telephone numbers in their signatures of their emails. And as always, we encourage you really, the best way is to chatter in a case or in an inquiry or submit, through the portal, submit a question you may have. So that's what we got, George.
And that question can even be a setup call, right? The next question was, what are all the forms exactly that have to be prepared and submitted for residential, small and big systems, commercial systems, and big land systems? JJ, you can answer that.
Yeah, so the forms, during 50's presentation, in the screening, there's actually a checklist. It's an Excel form that has every specific form. For simplified thresholds, 15 kWAC single phase and 25 kWAC three phase and less. The only things we require are our application form, site plan, one line, and the tech sheets. For expedited up to 250 kWAC, we require the Exhibit C application form, legal information form, site plan, one line, technical specification sheets, UL certificate, and then any curtailment or derating documentation if applicable for either track process. And again, there's a checklist of that in the presentation.
And I believe all the forms are also outlined in the interconnection tariff as well, right?
And in the portal.
And
The next one is just a duplicate. When will the 10 kWAC net metering limit be lifted? Next question, could the simplified interconnection process for new home construction projects where the solar system is being installed during the construction of the home be changed so the account number for the service request number service request number are not needed in order to receive approval to install? Jesse?
Yep, so we do require the account number and the work order number associated with the new permanent service that's being installed because it ensures, right, that our records align with the city and town's records in regards to the address, right? There's no meter out there just yet, so we have to track this project somehow. So we do require that work request number and the pending account number that's associated with that work request number for that permanent service. And then, once that permanent service is installed and that meter is installed, then, we can go ahead and update everything to reflect that, new meter. But at the very beginning, because there's nothing there, we do have to use the work request number and pending active account number for that permanent service.
Can PCS be used to install AC coupled batteries? When will the cap only be raised? So the question is, can PCS be used to install AC coupled batteries? JJ?
Yes, as long as the PCS being utilized is UL 1741 to be listed and proper documentation is provided.
Thank you. Does National Grid approve the Tesla Power current limit feature as a nameplate rating change on the inverter? If so, when changed to 10 kW or lower, this should fall within the net metering rules under the tariff. So JJ, that one's for you as well.
Yeah, so we worked with Tesla to ensure that their PCS that they provide is UL 1741 SP listed and the required information as part of their derating curtailment paperwork is accepted. And yes, that was National Grid's interpretation about being able to derate a system to 10 kW or lower to be eligible for net metering. And again, that was a DPU Cadmus decision to not allow any derated projects utilizing PCS to receive net metering incentives, and more of that will, or more on that will be provided from our legal counsel when they meet with Cadmus and the DPU.
All right. The next one is for Pam. When do you expect to be able to accommodate net metering credit allocations using Schedule Z to other accounts outside of National Grid or their own local region? And two, how should we advise customers who are selling their home that has a PV system on it to transfer remaining net metering credits and get the buyer set up to correctly with the new service net metering Mass Smart? Is Pam still on?
Yep, sorry, I was on mute. So cross EDC transfers will be allowed starting mid-2025. We're shooting for Q1 of 2025, but potentially mid-2025 before we can cross utilities. As for transfer of ownership, there's a transfer of ownership packet that is provided to customers when they move into a home that has solar. The quicker they can fill out those forms and get them back to us, the quicker we can get their account coded to bill properly. If your account becomes final because you've sold your home and you have a balance of credits on your account, you can transfer those credits on a one-time transfer from that finaled account to another account, but those credits are not refunded.
Thank you. The next question was, where can I get a copy of the slide deck? The slide deck will be posted on our NCAP portal stakeholder website. I would assume it'll be either later today or tomorrow. Well, certainly by the end of the week, it'll be posted on our website for you. Let's see, please confirm that Tesla Powerwall 3s are able to be entered as 11.5 kW AC at triage. JJ?
Yeah, the Powerwall 3 has the aggregate AC coupled ESS, having them rated at 11.5 kW AC total.
All right, this one's for Jesse for Mass Smart Projects. Where can the work request number be found?
So the work request number, once it's issued, can be found on your case for Mass Smart only. Otherwise, that you can log into the NE Electric Connects portal, and you'll be able to see all your work orders, whether it's Mass Smart or just an upgrade work order there that's associated with the premise.
Jesse, one more for you. If battery ESS will not export, how should the equipment selected be filled out?
So the asset record with the equipment type of storage should be filled out as normal, right, as you normally would. And then you would put in a protective function with the export limit to 0. And then, of course, you would submit your curtailment letter stating that the storage is not going to be exporting and it's on site load only. Also, note your one line and your application with that information. That way it is noted on that one line that your battery is not exporting and it's on site load only.
All right, last couple of questions here. During the expedited process, construction field work is becoming more prevalent. Since this process can take up to 180 days, what is the appropriate amount of time to check in for an update? Rich?
Before providing a time frame, we have been working over the last year or so to sort of reduce these time frames, getting multiple stakeholder groups internally involved, and we have seen a reduction in the time frame. But yeah, halfway through the project time frame would be a good time to check in. But again, we're hoping you're seeing some value in the fact that we've been able to turn not every project, let's be honest, but more projects around quicker than we have in the past. So that's what I got for you.
All right, thank you. And then any plans on taking credit cards to make application payments? Jesse, you want to take that one?
Yep. So no, at this time, we are not intending on activating credit card payments as a regulated utility, we're unable to accommodate the fees charged by credit card companies. However, you could sign up to do bank direct deposit check payments via the Paymentus portal. And we could send that link over to you.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, well, I know that was a lot of information to take in. We had to rush through some of it, and there's a bunch of slides here that we're gonna make available for you to review. Thank you all for joining us. If you have any additional questions, comments, feedback, feel free to continue to use the that question form. It'll be available for at least till the end of the day today. You can always reach out to me. Again, my name is George Souza. I'm the manager of DER Connections. You can reach out to me, Rich Johnson, JJ, Jesse. I think you know all of us, right? Feel free to reach out. And if you're not getting the answers that you're looking for, reach out to me directly. I have no problem with that. You want to jot down my number, 781-907-3422. That's my office number. And you can also email me, George, Jorge.Souza, S-O-U-S-A, @nationalgrid.com. Thank you very much, everyone. Be safe. Have a great week.
Bye.